Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Hira Khan and on behalf of my group Medscare Pharma and my group members Talha Naveed, Fatima Arshad, Hassan Murtaza and Mubashir Salim, I am going to present today the very newly launched drug named as Canagliflozin. Starting with the introduction and classification of Canagliflozin. Generally, it is classified as an oral anti-diabetic or oral hypoglycemic drug. It was approved by the Food and Drug Administration in 2013 to treat the symptoms of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Specifically, it is classified as a sodium glucose co-transporter receptor 2 antagonistic drug. Talking about the speciality of Canagliflozin. What makes Canagliflozin special is that it was the first approved SGLT2 inhibitor. Before its discovery, all of the anti-diabetic drugs had insulin or beta cell dependent mechanism of action. So it is safe to say that Canagliflozin is a wonderful discovery which opened a new door for researchers and doctors to treat the symptoms of type 2 diabetes mellitus and led to the discovery of other important drugs of the same category which are now used as dapagliflozin and empagliflozin. Now talking about the chemistry of Canagliflozin. This is the chemical structure of the Canagliflozin. It contains a thiophene ring as shown in the picture, and it is also considered in the category of organofluorine compound because of the fluorine attachment as shown. Further talking about the chemistry of Canagliflozin, it is actually used in anhydrous form to treat the type 2 diabetes mellitus. Its chemical formula is C24H25FO5S. It is a very potent and a stable compound. Now, as I mentioned that Canagliflozin is used as a symptomatic treatment of type 2 diabetes, so to understand the drug better, let me start with the pathology of a healthy individual versus a type 2 diabetic patient. As you can see in the diagram, the girl is a healthy individual and she is consuming healthy food. That food enters into his body and gets converted into small glucose molecules. Those glucose molecules then travel into the blood vessels and cause high blood glucose level. This high blood glucose level sends signals to the beta cells in the pancreas to secrete insulin. As you can see, those triangles actually indicate the insulin secreted by the beta cells of the pancreas. Those insulin molecules then goes to the cells, and on the cells are present the insulin receptors. To those insulin receptors, these insulin molecules attach. This attachment opens the cell's gates to absorb the glucose from the blood, and as a result the blood glucose level drops back to normal. Now if I talk about the pathology of type 2 diabetes mellitus, as you can see in the picture, the person is suffering from type 2 diabetes mellitus. He is very obese and is consuming junk food. When he consumes the food, it gets converted into glucose molecules, and that glucose travels to the blood, causing the high blood glucose level, same as that of a healthy individual. That high blood glucose level then sends signals to the beta cells of the pancreas to secrete the insulin. But in case of type 2 diabetes mellitus, the pancreas are damaged and the beta cells are producing very less insulin. The insulin that is being produced then goes to the cells, but unfortunately, because the person is very much obese, the fats deposit on the receptors insulin receptors of the cells, and those insulin molecules are unable to attach to the cells. Hence, the cell cannot uptake the glucose, and the glucose remains in the blood, and the blood glucose level remains high. This is what type 2 diabetes is. And when that blood is given to the kidneys to filter out the excess glucose, there is so much pressure on the kidneys, but the kidneys function is mainly to reabsorb the nutrients, and its receptors 99% reabsorb all of the glucose. Only 10% or less than 10% of the glucose is excreted through the urine. The deposition of the fats on the cells that does not allow the insulin to bind to its receptor. This condition is known as insulin resistance, and it is one of the major indications of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Now I will discuss about the treatment of type 2 diabetes mellitus through our drug, that is Canagliflozin. But before discussing the mechanism of action of Canagliflozin, let me discuss something about kidneys and how it actually reabsorbs that glucose molecules back into the blood. So kidneys have two types of receptors: sodium glucose cotransporter 1 receptors and sodium glucose cotransporter 2 receptors, and in short form they are known as SGLT1 receptor and SGLT2 receptors. SGLT1 receptor is actually present majorly in intestine and less majorly in the proximal convoluted tubules of nephron. It results in overall 10% glucose reabsorption by the kidney. So it does not play a major role in the reabsorption of glucose molecules. But if I talk about the sodium glucose cotransporter 2 receptor, it is majorly present in the proximal convoluted tubule of nephron, and it results in 90% of reabsorption of glucose from glomerular filtrate back into the blood. And our drug antagonistically majorly act on this receptor. Canagliflozin will bind to the SGLT2 receptor antagonistically, as I mentioned before, and thus it blocks the receptor to reabsorb the glucose back into the blood. And thus it causes 90% of glucose excretion through the urine, and at the end the blood glucose level drops back to normal. As you can see in the picture, it is a diagram of nephron, and this is the proximal convoluted tubule part of the nephron, which contains those SGLT1 receptor and SGLT2 receptor. If I zoom this picture, as you can see, this is the SGLT2 receptor. It binds with a single molecule of glucose along with a sodium molecule and co-transports them back into the blood. But when an SGLT2 inhibitor like Canagliflozin is given, it will bind to this receptor and will not allow this receptor to bind to glucose and sodium molecule. When there is no binding with sodium and glucose molecule, there is no reabsorption of these molecules back into the blood, and thus it causes them to excrete out through the urine. This was all about the mechanism of action, or you can say the pharmacodynamics of Canagliflozin and how it works. Now coming to the pharmacokinetics of Canagliflozin, starting with absorption. It is rapidly absorbed, it is 65% bioavailable, and its half-life is 10.6 hours. Coming to the distribution of Canagliflozin, it is a highly protein bound drug. It is actually 99% bound to albumin protein. Then comes the metabolism of Canagliflozin. It is metabolized in the liver and glucourinated into two inactive metabolites M5 and M7, with the help of the enzyme UGT. Then excretion occurs, and its excretion occurs mainly through feces, that is 60%, and then through urine, that is 33%. If I talk about the benefits of canagliflozin, the first and the foremost benefit of canagliflozin is weight loss. Now, how weight loss occurs is, since we know that canagliflozin causes 90% excretion of the blood glucose. So the cells still need energy, but now glucose is not available to be used as an energy source. So now the body will start using those fats as a source of energy, and the fats will start to break down. Once the fats start to break down, this is known as lipolysis, and it causes the weight loss of the patient, which is very much needed in a type 2 diabetic patient because he or she is very obese. The second benefits are the cardiovascular benefits. Now, the cardiovascular benefits occur because lipolysis is occurring, so the fat molecules that are deposited in those vessels and veins of the heart, they are also being broken down, so heart health also improves. And also it is connected with the another benefit of canagliflozin, that is, it also causes a decrease in blood pressure and arterial stiffness. Now, how the blood pressure is decreased is because we know that the SGLT2 inhibitor not only reabsorbs back the glucose molecule but also reabsorbs back the sodium molecule, and when it is being inhibited, the sodium molecule reabsorption is also being inhibited, and when sodium molecule reabsorption is inhibited, it causes a drop in the blood pressure of the type 2 diabetic mellitus patient, which is actually a very great problem in them. Now I will talk about the side effects of canagliflozin. The number one side effect of canagliflozin is increased urination, and the reason behind it is very simple. Since canagliflozin is excreting out 90% of the blood glucose, that means through osmosis water will also move out, and when water moves out, it causes increased urination. The second side effect of canagliflozin is the urinary tract infections. Now, why urinary tract infections occur? Because there is so much amount of glucose that is being excreted out through the urinary tract, some of the glucose molecules remain in the tract, and the bacteria and other infectious agents feed on those glucose molecules and cause the urinary tract infections. Other side effects of canagliflozin include fractures, kidney problems, and skin sensitivity, etc. If I talk about the adverse effects of canagliflozin, it includes lower limb amputation. This simply occurs because of the very less blood supply to the lower limbs, which makes the tissue die, and when tissue death occurs, we have to amputate it. The second major side effect or adverse effect of canagliflozin is ketoacidosis. Now, why ketoacidosis occurs is because canagliflozin is causing the body to break down the fat molecules for energy, and when those fat molecules are broken down, they are actually broken down by the body into keto bodies, and when those keto bodies rise in the blood, they cause ketoacidosis condition. Then the adverse effect of canagliflozin is volume depletion because of frequent urination. Now, despite all those benefits of canagliflozin and canagliflozin being a wonder drug, we still do not prefer canagliflozin clinically, and the reason is very simple. That is, it causes urinary tract infections, and we can say that after the neuroinfections, urinary tract infections are the second most deadly infections. That is why we do not prefer the use of canagliflozin. Now instead we use empagliflozin and dapagliflozin, If I talk about the brands available for Canagliflozin, our number one is Invocana brand, which is actually the first manufacturer of Canagliflozin, and it is the same company that manufactures Invocana Canagliflozin who discovered and synthetically made Canagliflozin in the laboratory for the first time. And second brand is Canliv. Was all about Canagliflozin from our side. I hope you have all understood it, and I hope this will be helpful to you in the future. Allah Hafiz and take care.